More breaking news. President Trump giving instructions for retaliatory bombings in the event that he is assassinated by Iran. Trump told the New York Post there was no fresh assassination plot, but he added Tehran has wanted him dead for years. The Washington Post reports officials are now considering a permanent security fence outside the White House. And the Wall Street Journal reports intelligence on a new plot to kill Trump came exclusively from Israel.
It's also easy to see that Israel would want to sort of buck up Trump, make him more willing to take on Iran more strongly. Netanyahu has been, pushing for that tougher stance, a more hawkish approach to Iran for quite some time, but Israel certainly has that interest. So it's hard to know. It's hard to know exactly what that intel is.
And Peter Baker is back with me. Also joining us now, Michael McFaul, MS Now International Affairs analyst and former U.S. ambassador to Russia. Good to have you both here. So, Peter, have U.S. agencies matched Israel's intel on a new plot to kill President Trump?
I don't believe so. Not that I've heard at this point. I do think that there's obvious suspicion about, the emanation of this. But it is true that they have had intel in the past about Iran's intent to assassinate not just Trump, but others from his first-term administration who were involved in the killing of Soleimani, the major general, in 2000, early 2000. And the Biden administration had that intelligence and considered it to be viable and plausible and something to be concerned about. They took action as a result of that. So I think that it's certainly within the realm of possibility. And we saw, obviously, the president decide to take a different plane back from Ankara because the new plane that he was given by the Qataris didn't have the, apparently reportedly didn't have the security, apparatus that the traditional Air Force One has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to dig into that with you, Michael, because he literally swapped planes Wednesday, flying home from the NATO summit in Turkey, which, as you know, borders Iran. He flew out of Turkey on that old Air Force One, and it was during the latest round of U.S. bombings in Iran. He then flew home in the Qatari jet, saying that it was sent to military bases to show it off to soldiers. But could there be other scenarios, some of which Peter just mentioned, that may have warranted that level of precaution?
Well, first, I want to level set by saying I just think it is absolutely absurd that President Trump took this gift from another country and now is using it to fly around as the president of the United States of America. I think we've gotten so used to this administration, we forget about that. This is crazy. They're just doing this for free. They just want, because they love the United States of America so much. That we need to remember first. Secondly, it always seemed to me absurd that they would be able to refit this plane with all of the materials that you need to keep the president safe and to keep him in communication with the world. When I worked for President Obama, I flew on Air Force One all the time. When I hear references that it's old, well, yeah, it's old, but it works. It's also very comfortable for the president of the United States, by the way. If it's not comfortable enough for him, that's quite striking to me. Maybe not so much for staff and reporters, Peter, but it is comfortable for him. But it also is a flying headquarters for the president. And now we're seeing, I think, that we have figured out that this is not a safe plane. It's not equipped, capable enough to fly around the president of the United States. I wish we would have come to that determination before he flew to Ankara.
Good point there. So, Peter, today the Times, as you know, reports that 4 reporters on that story were subpoenaed by federal agents who showed up at their homes, ordering them to testify at a grand jury Wednesday, less than a week after this first article was published. How shocking is this? Why did they move so quickly?
Well, it should be shocking. This is obviously an outrageous effort to intimidate the press, the latest of many we've seen in the last year and a half. The idea of trying to punish reporters for reporting about, the administration's handling of this is definitely a shooting the messenger kind of situation. Our newspaper is going to fight this, obviously. We issued a statement on it. And I just, we'll see what the courts do about it. But, once again, instead of focusing on whether or not this plane was a good idea, as Ambassador McFaul said, whether or not this plane is equipped properly to carry a commander in chief, they're focusing instead on punishing the people who are raising the questions.
You agree with that, Michael, that indeed this is just an effort to suppress the press, or is there more to it? Could there be more to it?
Well, to the best of my knowledge so far, the reporting I've seen, there's not more to it. This is going after the press, this is going after our First Amendment. We just celebrated 250 years of our country's Declaration of Independence. This is a violation of all the norms codified in that document. And if you're worried about leaks, you should go after your own people. You should find they're the ones that may have committed crimes. It is not a crime for the press to do their job. And that's what this president gets wrong all the time. And again, I worry we're becoming so immune, so used to these kinds of things. This should be this is an outrageous attack on our Constitution. And I'm glad we're talking about it, but more Americans need to talk about it, because the drip, drip, drip of this as we come up to our next electoral cycle, I think is really scary. I've seen this playbook before studying other countries, including Russia. This is what autocrats do. This is not what American presidents should be doing.
Chilling, that for sure. So, Peter, we have Tom Nichols, who writes in The Atlantic. Iran, not Trump, is in control of this war, setting the terms of the conflict and routinely humiliating the American president. And here's a look at how Trump's tone has shifted on Iran lately. Let's watch this.
I find them to be more rational, very smart. We found them to be rational. We're dealing with people that I think are very rational people. And they were nice to deal with. They were strong people, smart people. They're very smart people, very good negotiators, but so are we. Iran is being very nice. They're agreeing to everything that I want, and they have to. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people.
What changed, and do you think...
I got to know them. So I got to know them. And I'm not sure I want to make a deal with them. We can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. I just finished the job.
Well, there's a 180 and then some. So what accounts for this drastic change in rhetoric?
He got to know them. I mean, he didn't know them before. I mean, it's really hard to imagine the idea that somehow they were rational, nice people who wanted to do everything I want to do 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now suddenly they're scum, and he's discovered that they don't keep their word and that they can't be trusted. I think anybody who has dealt with Iran over the years would have told him that, of course, you know, these are tough characters who aren't going to necessarily tell you the truth and you can't trust, and they don't consider America to be their friend, and they were never nice people to begin with. But, you know, Trump personalizes these things all the time. When some foreign entity seems to go along with him, they're the greatest. When they stand up to him or defy him or refuse to do what he wants to do, they're scum. It's just you know, by tomorrow, if he sees some sort of progress he can claim in the negotiations, he'll say they're great again. We don't know, but it's a sign of where this war is right now, because what it seemed to indicate is if we can't make the easy part of this deal stick, we're never going to get to the hard part, right? This part of the deal, this memorandum of understanding, was really just about stopping the fighting so we could then have talks on the really tough issues like the nuclear program. Mm-hmm. And if you can't even keep this 60-day ceasefire going for 60 days, it doesn't feel like we're going to get to the nub of it. And that leaves the president in a position where he has to make a decision on what he's willing to do militarily to try to force them to back down, and what he's willing to give up diplomatically, if that's the route he wants to take, that he hasn't already given up.
So, Ambassador, a Wall Street Journal analysis concludes that the fight over the Strait of Hormuz boils down to one poorly worded clause in Trump's MOU, and Iranian hardliners used that to take control over the waterway as a key leverage point. Before he signed it, Trump had said that he was meticulous about adding specific words like acquire to the MOU. Did he miss something here?
Maybe. You know, it was a pretty short memorandum of understanding. But I want to underscore what we're talking about, to echo something Peter just said. What are they trying to achieve? They're trying to achieve the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Why was it closed? It was closed because of Trump's war against Iran. All of the other objectives that the president told us when he launched this war, they're not even on the table. So talking about eliminating their nuclear weapons program, talking about reducing to zero their missile production, cutting off terrorist support, liberating the people of Iran. Those were all the objectives of the war that the president articulated. And instead, we're talking about a new problem that his own war created. And I think that underscores what a disaster so far this war of choice has been for the president of the United States.
Speaking of war, Ambassador, here's what he said Wednesday about getting a deal to end Russia's war in Ukraine. Let's watch that.
That's all I've done. My whole life I made deals. That's, I guess, becoming president was making a deal, right? It was like a lot of little individual things. In the end, it's making a deal. And that's what I do. And I do it well, and I know when people want to make a deal.
So he has not been able to get an Iran deal. But what could be happening behind the scenes to bring Putin and Zelensky closer to an agreement?
You know, to the best of my knowledge, not much. I hope the president is focused. I hope his negotiators have a plan. Most certainly, President Zelensky has a plan. He wants to end the air wars, right? He wants to end the attacks on his civilians in return for ending attacks on military targets deep inside Russia. I think that's his game plan. And I hope it will end. There are just way too many people dying every single day on both sides, but especially these terrorist attacks inside Ukraine, including just in the last 24 hours. But I've seen no evidence whatsoever that Putin is interested in that deal. So I hope there's something there. But so far, the evidence doesn't support that hypothesis.
Okay. Ambassador Michael McFaul, always good to speak with you, my friend. And Peter Baker, double duty today. Thank you. Lucky me.
Joining me now is Ronaldo Salgado, the son of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo and Juan Proaño, CEO of the League of United Latin American Cities. Juan is representing the family through LULAC. Ronaldo, let me start with you. I'm first of all, I'm so incredibly sorry and have so much admiration for your strength and your bravery in speaking out. And you have captured the hearts of so many people across this country and the world. I would love for you just to talk about your dad. When you think about your dad, what do you hope people remember about him? What do you want them to know about your dad?
My dad was hardworking man. He was someone who dedicated his life to his craft, to his business, to his family, his employees. He was a dad that always valued education, if not for him, but for us, for his kids, because he understood that education would take us far. Through his hard work and efforts, he saw his oldest, which is myself, attend and graduate college. My younger brother go to college as well. And then my youngest, who's currently in college out of state. This is a man who provided for us, who provided for my mom. He promised my mom, that she would never have to work because he got us. So that's how I want the world to remember my dad.
I wonder, Ronaldo, you've watched in the last few days. I know that, this grieving process is at its infancy, but at the same time, there is this investigation that is, being pursued by the government. How has the investigation been handled by the government, in your opinion?
Right now, I'm just focused on the funeral arrangements for my dad. I can't think about the investigation at the moment. I just, of course, want to continue pressuring for an independent investigation and for all the evidence to be released. We just want his van back. We want his wallet. We want his belongings back. Investigation is not in my immediate view right now. Right now, the focus is getting him a proper burial to put him to rest.
The Secretary of Homeland Security said that, and you know this, that said your dad tried to ram an ICE vehicle in an attempt to run over an ICE law enforcement officer. I understand. I actually can't understand what it must be like to hear this and to know your father and to see the videos. What is it like?
It's terrible. I mean, we're left without a father. My mom is left without a husband. I mean, no matter how anyone puts it, a life was lost, and it was unfortunately someone who did not deserve it. And I know deep down in my heart that, again, these were unmarked cars. These were unmarked vehicles, no flashing lights or emblems. My dad was law-abiding. In the process of getting a work permit, we've spoken many times as a family together on what would happen, what should happen in the event of ICE detained him. So there was a way for him to come back home to us had those vehicles been properly marked.
Do you have a message for President Trump?
I do not want to speak to the president, nor do I have a message for him. I just want my dad. I just want to have a funeral for him. I know that the people behind me have many messages for him. I right now just want to think about my dad, not about the president.
I completely and totally understand that. Juan, let me turn to you, because LULAC is one of the groups organizing behind Ronaldo and his family. And as these local authorities continue gathering information, have you seen any evidence that substantiates these claims that ICE and Homeland Security is making about Lorenzo trying to ram the vehicle?
No, not at all, Jacob. As a matter of fact, we've done our own analysis working with the Latino small businesses in the community that trust our organization, and, to make it available to the public and to the media. But, we believe that these are lies, these are fabrications. Their story continues to change, by the hour and basically by the day. And to your point, we've seen this playbook before with Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. There's nothing here that would justify any use of excessive force, and sadly the killing or the murder, quite frankly, of Lorenzo.
Ronaldo, what does your family need most right now, for the people that are watching that want to help, that want to hold out a hand to you? The floor is yours.
Thank you. My family, we've had conversations specifically with my mom. She has not been on social media. She has not turned on the TV. It's been off since that day. I finally took her to the site of where it happened, where there's a growing memorial, and she didn't know how big of a deal this has become. And she is a woman of not many words, but she felt very, very touched by seeing all the support from the public. And she wants justice, the same thing that we all want, justice, and reform, so that nothing like this ever happens to anyone's dad, to anyone. Everyone has a right to go to work and get back home to their families, and to grow old and to live a full life.
Juan, after the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good, and frankly, as Greg Bovino and his troops went from Los Angeles to Chicago to Charlotte to Minneapolis, even here in New York in the hallways of 26 Federal Plaza, every time they were driven out, they they backed down in the face of protests. What does LULAC want to see the American public do in the wake of this horrific tragedy?
Well, it's been 6 months since the Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy shooting. We saw folks coming out in the streets. Sadly, the murder of Lorenzo requires the same type of response. The Latino community is standing up for itself. We've had over 160,000 people sign a petition asking for an independent investigation. We're working with a larger coalition of our Black leaders and progressive leaders out there to make sure that, everyone knows that we can no longer stand for this type of ICE enforcement action. Sadly, nothing really changed after Nome Reno. Mark-Wayne Mullen is actually really no different. He's a different person in a different suit, but the detention to deportations continue. And DHS was happy to announce that they had detained over 10,000 people a little bit over a week ago. So it continues to happen. We can't be blind to it. Our community has to be ever vigilant because we ultimately really are the targets.
Ronaldo, I don't think anyone who has seen a family member go through anything like this is ever prepared. But as you watched all of this unfold over the last year plus in the United States, you said you spoke with your father about what to do if ultimately he was detained. The fact that this is where we are, that this is where you are a year after this largest mass deportation effort in American history has begun. What do you want other people to know that might not ever expect to be in this situation, but may have had the same conversations that your family has?
Yeah, there's just I just want people to continue watching each other's backs. There's always the fear, migrants and then just people of color always have this fear of being, profiled or being mistaken for someone for someone else, right? There's always a fear of law enforcement, targeting us. So we have to continue, watching over our shoulders. I am very thankful for the Facebook groups that I'm in, that allowed me the opportunity to see where my dad was and allowed me to see, at least in a very gruesome detail, moments after he got shot and dragged out of the car. Without the help of the social media, with Facebook groups, I would not have been on scene so quickly. I just want to give a huge shout out to the Southeast HTX news page. They've been nothing but supportive during this. Every single day, we see posts on there saying, "Hey guys, watch out! ICE is at this place. Hey guys, they picked up these people. This van is left behind. Please check on your people." So we must continue to stay vigilant, and we must continue to, watch each other's backs and watch out for the little people, because, we feel that, as people of color, as migrants, and any underrepresented or underserved communities, we feel that, that the big government and we feel that they don't care about us, and that they see our life as expendable, or, that we don't matter. We do matter, right? As a collective unit, we matter to everyone, to each other. So we just need to continue watching for each other and taking care of each other and checking up on each other.
My absolute deepest condolences and sympathy, Ronaldo Salgado, the son of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. May his memory be a blessing. And Juan Proaño, CEO of the League of United Latin American Cities.
In their new book, Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan write, quote, "One morning, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt entered the Oval Office to find Donald Trump clutching a tube of super glue and attempting to affix gold decorations to the marble fireplace mantel." As he was known to prefer his own aesthetic handiwork to anyone else's. I can understand that, honestly. The sight of the president squeezing glue onto gilded appliques and mounting them on the wall himself surprised no one in his inner circle. Joining us now are the authors of that book, Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Just to use a phrase Eugene likes to use, we want to give you guys your flowers.
Yes.
I know there's been lots of celebrations, but we're going to give you our own. This book is a feat and a defining tome of the Trump administration and this man who has risen to power and held on to it for so long. So congratulations, and thank you for making time for us. Maggie, we're going to start with you. There's been some news last night. Some of your colleagues were subpoenaed. I'm honestly, quite frankly, surprised that you and Jonathan haven't been attacked as aggressively as this administration has done to other outlets so far when they have seen unfavorable reporting that does not shine the most positive light on the president and his staff. Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened yesterday and what the impetus for this attack on journalists, just the latest, was caused by?
Our colleagues who wrote about President Trump's Air Force One departure from Turkey, he flew in on the Qatari plane that is now retrofitted to be the new Air Force One. He left on the old Air Force One, and our colleagues reported, as others have, that the Secret Service suggested it. Yesterday, they reported that the new plane does not have the same equipment that, defensive equipment that the old one does. And several of our colleagues were subpoenaed yesterday. And it's unfortunately not the first time that we have seen the Trump administration try to intimidate journalists doing their job.
Federal agents showed up at their doors.
Using subpoenas or federal agents going to their homes. And at least in one case that we know of in the Washington Post, searching their homes. They were doing their job. They were informing the public. This is what is going on with the president and what is going on with the safety of the president aboard a taxpayer paid for plane, despite all the claims that it was free, is a public's right to know. There are White House staff and journalists aboard those planes as well. And fortunately, the New York Times has made clear it's going to vigorously defend its journalists.
We also published this at MS Now. And since we published our story, the White House commented on it, calling it, quote, fake news, but did not offer a denial or additional details, as they often don't. I want to bring you in here, Jonathan Swan. I also want to find a way to get you some new headphones, because those are just for television, my friend.
Mate, why is it people saying this about the headphones?
I like it.
I saw someone tweet them. I think they're fine.
Everyone needs a thing.
On the headphones.
We need some little earbuds. You're too
fabulous.
You're too fabulous for them big old headphones.
Some Jonathan solidarity.
Exactly.
You, Jonathan.
There you go.
Send me some, Eugene.
We are not in consensus here.
So the thing about there are a lot of things within your guys' book, which was just fabulous, that for somebody reading it, they can be like, oh, this is silly. Like Donald Trump running around gluing the things around the Oval Office. But I think it tells you a lot about him. I think that's what you guys are so good at within this book. And as a reporter, what was great for me with this book is a reminder that Donald Trump isn't actually that complicated of a person. And he's much more simple than I think a lot of folks want to think about it. Like the things that move him are kind of simple. He focuses on a couple of things. Everyone else is doing the rest of the work. And I'm curious, as you watch coverage and as you're thinking about like what's going to happen next, if you could even think about that, that aspect of him as kind of a person who operates by id and how important that is to understanding who this man is.
Yeah, so I mean, what we tried to do in the book was tackle the big weighty issues. You know, we have deep reporting and coverage in the book of the profit making that the Trump family has been doing off the presidency. We go into ICE, we go into foreign policy and whatever, but we also want to show Iran, Epstein, whatever. But we also want to show what life is actually like inside the White House and inside the residence. And, some of the more, I guess you would say, intimate details of what that life is like. And the truth is, uncomfortable for some people to acknowledge, but the president is spending an inordinate amount of his time and his mental energy on redecoration. He just is. It's what's on his mind. When Maggie and I walked into the Oval Office finally at the end of this process for an interview with him on March 16th, 17th day of the war with Iran, Americans had already died, service members. And what was on his desk? Photographs of maple trees. And he holds them up. He says, I'm buying maple trees for the White House. And then what's under that? Photographs of the ballroom. And he starts talking about how one side is inspired by Athens, the other side is inspired by Greece, by Rome, the size of the columns, what have you. So it's just a fact. He's spending an inordinate amount of time on that. But there's a more important point, which is what we try to explain in the book, and it really became apparent to us even in more stark terms towards the end of our reporting process, is Donald Trump's mindset this term is very different from term one. In term one, he was very reactive to domestic politics. If the polls changed, there would be, those of you who covered him understand he would frequently change course. This time around, he's playing for what he regards as, how can I be a great man of history? And that was really brought into stark relief when he handed Maggie and I mean, I'm not going to rehearse the whole scene, but you'll see it in the book. But when he hands us this document, which compares his power favorably to people like Mao, Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Napoleon, and what have you, not on a moral sense, but just in raw power. And so I think you start to see now his focus in the second term, taking big risks internationally to try to reshape the world. You see that in Venezuela, you see it in Iran, you might see it in Cuba. We're seeing a lot of planning behind the scenes now with Cuba. But you're also seeing it in the way that you set up in your introduction. You're seeing it with him renaming things after himself, building monuments essentially to himself. So it's both domestically and foreign.
So, Maggie, speaking of spending his mental energy on a lot of these other things, Eugene knows what's coming. I wonder, through all your reporting and all the seriousness and everything, I keep wondering about the president's mental acuity. Particularly, he is now older than he was in the first term. He is now 80 years old. Just at the NATO summit, he talked about the Islamic Republic of Japan, the JCPOC, saying to the reporters, do you have a question for President Putin? Had this happened in a previous administration, people would be saying the man is nuts. He shouldn't be in office anymore. When it comes to this president, given all the reporting that you and Jonathan have done, should the American people be concerned about the mental acuity of this president?
Well, what we've seen over time is that clearly a lot of people do have that concern. You hear from people the same as we do. His health is like a black box inside that administration, much more than almost any other issue. And if there is an area of failure in the reporting for us, it was this, in trying to, not mental per se, but just his health, right. How he is, why he has gone to Walter Reed several times, and they have released less and less information. We see what you see, which is he is 80, which is that he is clearly, doesn't speak with the same crispness that he did 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, as people who turn 80 tend not to.
That's understandable.
Yeah, there was nothing, I will say, in our interview with him, which was a fact-checking interview. This is the one that Jonathan was referring to, where we were handed the...
Which, honestly, that scene is worth the price of the book alone.
And how long was that?
Yeah, it was an hour. So actually, let me set the scene for that just for a second, and it does answer your question to some extent. Just in terms of what we know, there was nothing that seemed unlike Donald Trump, of who Jonathan and I have both been around a lot. We have interviewed repeatedly. There was nothing that felt, oh, this is unusual, this is different. It was actually quite the same. Just, Steve Bannon refers in the book to pure Trump, and this was very much pure Trump. But we walked in, and after Jonathan was describing what had happened, we had asked him about presidential power, and he had described himself to somebody, a couple of people, that, as far as we knew, maybe more than that, as the most powerful U.S. president who had ever existed. And, we were in a new war after he had campaigned on no new wars. So we wanted to hear what he would say if we put that question to him. And what we got was this 2-pager that Jonathan referenced, which he described as being written by a historian who was a friend of Gary Player, the golfer. He had his aide, Natalie Harp, go get the... So she hands us these 2-pagers. She gives him one too, and he's just reading it, and he's reading what he describes as the top 10, and it's history's, conquerors and monsters, frankly. Mao, Stalin, Hitler, Alexander the Great, Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, the Caesars. And he says, because there's more than one Caesars. Tamerlane. I'm missing someone, but you get the point.
We got the idea.
Yeah. You get the point. And he's reveling in being in their company, as Jonathan was saying. And that was the part that was so striking to me, frankly, and to Jonathan. It was this extraordinary moment. In particular, the fact that he was talking about Hitler just again, it was not an immoral component, but often when people have raised a Hitler comparison as a critique of him, which is not infrequent, and you and I, all three of us have seen it, all four of us have seen it. I was surprised. He gets very reactive. I was surprised to hear him just sort of, reading this way. The coda is that it was not a historian. It was Gary Player's former caddy and business associate who reads a lot. But, the reality is that he wanted us to understand these folks have power, I have more, and I'm willing to use it. And so that is the constant. And, Jonathan was making the point that he was more reactive in term one. And that is very much what we, found in our reporting for this book. But there's a part of this that both of us, and we've written this when he was at Axios, when I was at the Times, some of this is what he was preparing to do in 2020, had COVID not happened. And you are now really seeing pure Trump. So the mental acuity point is not one that I feel equipped to answer.
Sure.
And I don't think Jonathan does either. But I think that people can very legitimately question whether 80-year-old people should be president. And there are reasons for that. But that's a different issue.
Embattled candidate Graham Plattner has officially withdrawn from the Maine Senate race after sexual assault allegations surfaced earlier this week. He denies the accusations, but President Trump's response to the scandal is still raising eyebrows. Himself, a flamboyant anti-establishment disruptor, accused of a lengthy roster of negative personal behavior, which he declared either irrelevant or false.
It's really a question of whether or not you believe the woman. A lot of people say big falsehoods. It's he's in a bind. He's in a bind. But should they be able to do it? Well, I guess he's going to lose. I would imagine he's going to lose.
Joining me now is our friend Stephanie Grisham, former Trump White House Communications Director and Press Secretary, and author of the book, I'll Take Your Questions Now, What I Saw at the Trump White House. Good to see you, Stephanie. And look, I point out that you were once his communications chief. So what point is the president making there?
Well, that's pretty simple. Here's the guy who, his administration still hasn't released any of the Epstein files. And here's a man who has been accused of various misdeeds in that arena so many times. So he's trying to deflect. He doesn't want to say that what Graham Plattner was accused of is vile and disgusting, and he should have been rightly taken out of the race, because he doesn't want it to turn back on him with all of the accusations that have come up against him and allegations against him. It's just so peak Trump.
Yeah, well, I do want to point out some of the Epstein files have been released, certainly not all of them, and there's great clamoring for all of them to be released. But look, Democrat voters, they were willing to stick with Plattner for a while. But did Republican voters create this environment by repeatedly overlooking Trump's negative personal behavior? Not only getting him elected the second time, in 2024, but the first time in 2016 when he talked about, grabbing and and that whole Access Hollywood scandalous tape. I mean, have the Republicans effectively desensitized the public to what extent does character matter anymore?
I had in my notes before joining you that I wanted to talk about character, so you took it out of my mouth. But it should
great
matter.
minds thinking alike. How's that?
Exactly. The short answer is yes. I think that, and I want to say that Republicans, they weren't like this before. That's not the Republican Party that I grew up talking to my grandfather about. I think Trump has desensitized all of us. And this comes from a person who was with him when that Access Hollywood tape came out and stuck with him. It's easy when you've kind of chosen your team, your jersey color. In this case, I had chosen Trump, like most of the country or half the country had and has. And you stick with them. And I think that it has made the Democrats, they made a mistake with Graham Plattner, and they were just wanting a Senate seat, and they forgot about character. And that's really not good, because it's just politicians, nobody trusts them anyway, right? They're at their lowest point in terms of people trusting them. And this did not help the Democrats, especially coming up on the midterms when things are so vital for them.
Can I also ask about the DOJ subpoenaing New York Times reporters, 4 of whom worked on this plane swap story? Having worked in the Trump White House, why go after the reporters if, as DOJ is saying today, they are not the targets?
Well, they're weaponizing the court system and every lever of federal government that they can to try to figure out who the leakers are. I mean, this has been something he has wanted since we were in the first administration. I can't tell you how many times I was tasked with finding the leakers, who wrote the book Anonymous, Stephanie. And then I remember when the first family was taken to the bunker and I was accused of leaking that. It's not because of national security concerns. It's because he doesn't want to look weak. He's afraid of looking weak if he gets taken to a bunker. He's afraid that he looks weak if his brand new plane that he just spent millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on to get ready is not safe enough for the president of the United States and all the hundreds of people on board to fly. He doesn't want that to be a topic of conversation. And so now they're going to try to find the leakers and hide behind national security as an issue, which, don't get me wrong, it is an issue. The fact that we have a plane from a foreign government that our president is flying on that is not equipped to handle if something, God forbid, should happen in the air is absolutely criminal. And I don't understand how Congress is allowing it. I don't understand how the Secret Service, every level of law enforcement, the chief of staff and the deputy chief of staff of operations is allowing it.
Can I just ask, can you think of anybody within this current White House who would have pushed back on this happening, who would have said to him, Mr. President, this is not a good idea?
I'm sure that some people did, absolutely, but I'm sure he didn't care and said, we're doing this anyway. And I don't know what the answer is, because when the president of the United States, as your commander in chief, tells you to do something, you do it. But again, you're taking people's lives into account. It's not just the office of the presidency up there. It's also lots of people. And it's our country, and the safety of the president should be paramount to everything else. So it boggles the mind, but this is what he does to you.
So last week, as you know, the president's financial records showed that he cleared more than $2.2 billion in crypto and other investments during his first year in office this term. And a new poll shows most Americans say Trump is using his office for personal gain, even as gas and food prices, they are up 20-30% in some cases. But the Treasury Secretary came to Trump's defense. Here's that.
Well, again, I don't think there's an appearance problem. The president, this is an innovation presidency. So whether it's digital assets, whether it's AI, whether it's everything that is going on in the tech ecosystem, that all Americans are benefiting from that.
How much does Trump care when he's racking up profits? Is he disconnected from reality on the economy, except how it pertains to him? And how is his approach to bread and butter issues, do you think, different in this second term than what you witnessed in the first?
Well, in this second term, he's got no guardrails, which is something I warned people about, as you well know. But he doesn't have anybody who is really pushing back or trying to craft the messaging anymore. And even if there are people like that, he doesn't care because he knows this is kind of his last go around. But to answer your question, he's a millionaire. Well, I guess he's a billionaire now at the expense of taxpayer dollars. But he doesn't. When's the last time that man walked into a grocery store? Same with our Treasury Secretary. They don't know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. They don't know what it's like to have to stretch your last dollar while you're at the grocery store. Here's a man who talks about gas prices like it's no big deal. But let me remind you, he gets driven around in a giant motorcade with all that gas, again being paid for by taxpayer dollars. So, and he even said in a gaggle that he doesn't worry about, I'm paraphrasing, the economy and people when he's thinking about that. So he's very disconnected. He doesn't care. He doesn't understand what that is. He grew up, he got a tiny loan from his dad and millions of dollars. So he's very disconnected. But again, he tricked us all with his plain speak, including me. He tricked us all. And now we're seeing the real Donald Trump.
So the president triggered some new questions about his mental acuity when making public remarks during the NATO summit. Here are a few things that he said while meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Let's watch this.
We had 111 missiles shot by the Islamic Republic of Japan. Frankly, they picked the wrong country. JCPOC. What a What a terrible deal. Do you have a question for President Putin, please? President, do you have a question for President Putin? Not Zelensky. Putin. Yeah, what would you like to ask him? Because I'm going to ask him that question.
JCPOA. I mean, has something changed? What is the main difference between the president that you see in the second term compared with the one you saw up close in the first?
I'll say that with the clips you just showed, I mean, having traveled with the president on many overseas trips, those trips do kick your butt. You're very tired. You're jet lagged. He does not sleep on the airplane. And so I can see a few slip ups happening, and I don't think maybe it's that big a deal. He is 80 years old. However, I've been watching him fall asleep in the Oval Office, and I've been seeing the way he's even walking lately. And I don't take any joy in that, honestly. It reminds me of when I first saw my grandfather after being apart from him for a while, and he's just declining. He's declining in the way he speaks, in the way he physically walks. Obviously, he's got these gaffes going on, but he just looks older. He's got these bruises and the swollen ankles. And I think all of that, sure. I mean, he's 80 years old, but it makes me sad to see the way he's declining and that it seems to be happening so fast.
Okay. Stephanie Grisham, it's awfully good to see you. Don't make it so long till the next time. Thank you.